Great, thanks everyone. Thanks Frizo also. Are you still in here? Or did he leave already? I always enjoy listening to Frizo talk. Every time I do, I learn something new, which is really, really makes it worth my while. So thanks Frizo, and I guess he's probably gone back to work. Interesting story about Frizo, I'll tell since he's not here. Frizo actually got, I don't know how many of you use Twitter, maybe? So Frizo managed to get the very last existing 3-letter Twitter handle a few years ago. The very last one that was available with 3 letters, Frizo got it. So just a little factoid about him. But so if you think about it, what we all really want in the end is we want to find ways to convince our customers to do the things on our web platforms that we want them to do. Okay, we all really just want to find ways to convince people to do the things that we think they should do on our websites. So it shouldn't be that hard, right? I mean, essentially. But then we start thinking, okay, what exactly is it that I want my customers to do when they come to my websites? And we start realizing that the answer to that question is not always so straightforward. So I think back on some of the, so what I do is I do consulting with various web platforms and also non-web platforms, but largely focused on e-commerce and such. And when I think back about some of the companies that I've worked with over the past few years, then I think, for example, Coolblue, right? So Coolblue is pretty much a pure play e-commerce player. They're pretty extraordinary in a lot of ways, but essentially what they're doing is pure e-commerce. So you think, what does Coolblue want their customers to do? Okay, you've got the basic conversion event of making a large purchase. Okay, they want you to go there to buy your computer, to buy your phone, your lawnmower, your barbecue, even your toothbrush. Okay, they've got over 300 web shops. But really it's much more than that if you look at the events that they're looking at that they want the visitors to their web platforms to do. From the start, okay, they want people to create an account and to log in when they shop. So that's the first conversion event to some extent. After you've placed an item in the web basket, they want to start cross-selling things. So you put a laptop in there, they want to start advertising to you a mouse, a USB stick, a power cord, all these different accessories, okay? And as you put those in, those are additional conversion events. After the sale, they love it if you brag to your friends about what you bought. Okay, so now you're sharing on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or Pinterest. Okay, these are all additional conversion events that happen even just at the point of sale. And now they want you to come back 2 weeks later, leave a review for the product, come back 3 months later, buy an additional item, come back a year later, buy a replacement item. So when you think of the conversion events that you have just for an e-commerce player, there's a whole list of them, and it's all sort of different points along the user journey. Okay, so already I'm thinking in terms of user journey and where I want my user to fall along during that journey. Okay, now you go to another site like eBay. Okay, eBay has similar events, but they've got additional conversion events, such as converting someone from a buyer into a seller, converting a seller into a power seller. You look at Marktplaats as more of a publishing company than an e-commerce company, I'm going to say, and our conversion events there had more to do with generating traffic. Okay, repeat visits, growth, expansion, becoming a destination site. And also, at what stage you are in your growth is really also going to determine what your priority is for conversion events. Young companies are going to prioritize conversion events focused on growth and expansion, so stickiness, virality, growing your user base. More mature companies are going to focus on things related to revenue, year-over-year growth and such. So everyone's got their own list of what conversion events are most important to them. But regardless of what your list is, regardless of what's important to you in the end with your conversion events, what's critical in all this is to develop a deep understanding of your customer. Because if you don't develop a deep understanding of your customer, there's no way that you're going to be able to guide them through this conversion event journey that you want them to follow. Okay, there's just no way. So now we're looking at this topic of conversion rate optimization as really something which necessitates a deep understanding of the customer. So now conversion rate optimization, it's an art and a science. Okay, it's a mixture of psychology and of technology, and it's very multidisciplinary. Okay, no one department can facilitate everything that's involved with conversion rate optimization. But in the modern world of e-commerce, there's no way to get around some strong technology solutions. Okay, you need to have strong technology solutions, strong analytics tools in order to facilitate this conversion rate optimization in the modern online world. Okay, and that's what I want to focus on during the talk. And I want to specifically focus on how modern tools with data and analytics are going to help us do three things. Okay, and those three things are to develop a deep understanding of the online customer journey, to get keen awareness of what is and isn't working in our product offering, and to give us tools to help steer the online customer journey. Okay? So three things. Helping us understand the customer journey, help us understand what is and isn't working in our product offering, and help us begin to steer and guide the customer through the online journey. And those three things are going to give us the technological tools, which coupled with the psychological and more intuitive resources we have, are going to help us increase our conversion rates across the board. Okay, so first a question to you. How many of you have ever signed up to run a marathon? You've signed up to run a marathon, show of hands. Not a lot, not a whole lot. Okay, how many of you have actually finished that marathon? You ran it and you finished it. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So here is a picture of me running the 2016 London Marathon. Ready? Do you see me? No, because I'm not actually in this picture. So I didn't actually run this marathon. I've never run a marathon. I don't think I physically could. I would probably fall over and die halfway. But this is a picture of the 2016 London Marathon. Okay? This is what it actually looks like. 40,000 people ran in this marathon. 40,000 people ran. How many people do you think finished from this 40,000? Okay. Well, at last count, 35,000 people finished. But it was a few months ago, and it might be that more people are still crossing the finish line as we speak. So, but this is a picture of the actual people running. It's a lot of data, 40,000 people, step by step for 42 kilometers. Okay? Anything we want to know about the London Marathon, we can get by watching those 40,000 people run the 42 kilometers. Unfortunately, it's a little bit too much information. Okay? Here's another picture of the London Marathon. Start point, end point. 40,000 people started, 30,000 people ended. Okay? So this is not quite enough information. The problem here is that we're missing all the data about the user journey. And if I ask you the question, what happened to those 10,000 people, you have no idea. Was it a certain type of person who fell off? Did they fall off because it started raining halfway? Was there a snowstorm? Was there someone offering free drinks at the 5 kilometer point and then everyone stopped? You just don't know. But unfortunately, a lot of times we're looking at our conversion rates online in a similar way. We pull up our web analytics tool, we talk to our marketers, and we say, hey, you brought me 40,000 visitors with this campaign, 30,000 converted, great, okay, let's do another campaign. But we're missing the understanding that we could build of the customer journey between these 2 points. Okay, and that's what we want to get back. Now let's take this into the online world. Okay, so I mentioned that this last year I did a project with Belvila. Most of you are probably familiar with Belvila. It's a very well-known brand in the Netherlands. Belvila is part of the At-Leisure Group, and the At-Leisure Group is one of the largest European online booking portals for vacation rentals. So hotels, vacation parks, private homes and such. You're looking at about 500,000 houses available for rent on the At-Leisure platform. These are spread over about 36 different countries, right? And every year, about 1.3 million holidaymakers from 140 different countries are booking their vacation rentals through an At-Leisure platform. So it's a very large platform. It has a lot of inventory, a lot of traffic. Those of you in the Netherlands are typically using the Belvila brand, and typically you're using it now because January is the big month to book your holidays. Then we see traffic really spike in January. So not to get you worried, but you may very well have seen the landing page for Belvila in the past few days. Okay, so what happens with Belvila? And when I'm talking about customer journey, what does that look like on Belvila? Okay, now by way of background, Belvila's been around for about 30 years. About 2 years ago, it was majority stake acquired by the Axel Springer Group. And Axel Springer had very ambitious growth plans for Belvila, one of which centered around a strategic initiative to leverage the power of data and analytics to grow Belvila in an organic way. So the CTO for At-Leisure was also an ex-eBay employee, and he and the CEO asked me to come in and essentially work alongside them for a period of a few months to help launch a brand new data science program at Belvila. So that's a lot of what's been keeping me busy over the past year. It was quite interesting. But essentially what we did is we demonstrated how you could go from almost no use of data analytics to very sophisticated and applicable use of data and analytics. And a lot of that centered around focusing on the user journey and what insights we could get from that and how we could leverage that in a way which eventually led to a real-time recommendation engine. Okay. A lot of the steps we took were relatively painless, but brought really quick benefits. But let me talk about the user journey and illustrate to you what happens with Belvila when we're talking about user journey and how that benefits. Here's the landing page. So I land here, and essentially I tell Belvila 3 things. I tell them where I want to go, when I want to go, and how many people I want to take with me. Okay, not a lot of information. I hit that beautiful little orange button on the bottom that says Zuken, and this is what I get. Now, Belvila knows 3 things about me, but it's already got more than 1,000 properties it could offer me. And this is where things get dangerous, right? More than 1,000 properties, and it's got to give me 6 of them that it thinks spikes my interest enough to keep me from going to a competitor. Now, what it's also going to do, which of course everyone does, is on the left-hand side, it's going to give me a refinement list. And now it's going to start to know more about me. It's going to start to know more. It's going to give me a chance to offer information about what my intention is. Okay? So this is my intention that it's going to start to learn. What price do I intend to spend? What amenities do I want to have from off the start? Okay? Now it's got a choice. It's got a choice to either continue giving me search results without thinking, or to start learning from me. And if it wants to really grow as a platform, if it wants to optimize its conversion rates, it has to make the choice to start learning from me rather than simply returning search result after search result. So this is a typical user journey. Let me walk you through a user journey on Belvila. I enter and I'm looking for a summer holiday in the south of France with 4 people. I get the first search result page and I have an option to complete additional filters. Okay? So now I tell Belvila I want something between 1,000 and 1,400. Okay? This is the price range I have in mind when I come. I want air conditioning, barbecue, and I definitely want to bring my pet Chihuahua with me. So I click the little house deer. Okay? Now I press search again, and now Belvila knows what I'm really looking for when I enter the site. I click on one property, view it for 45 seconds, click on another property, view it for 10 seconds, and go back to the first property for 90 seconds. Now I'm already getting an idea, what is it that's interesting this person? Okay, Frizo mentioned this a little bit too. You know, you're learning as you watch the customer what they select. Okay? I'm watching their journey and I'm seeing not just what I've looked at once, but what I've come back to. Now I start changing my search. I increase the price range and I increase the occupancy to 6. Now what have I learned about my customer? I've learned that customers have a certain price range in mind, and this particular customer at least had more margin above that they were willing to spend. They were willing to look at larger properties if that meant getting a different selection. Okay? Now I see another property and I stay in that for 200 seconds, which is over twice as long as I spent on the previous property. So now I know, by comparison, that I'm hitting on something which is definitely more interesting. I haven't done any reservation yet. In some sense, I haven't done any conversion, but already at this point, there's a lot that I know about the customer by watching their journey. Okay? Now the customer continues to go on, and he changes the search from France to Italy. Okay, now this is really golden, and why is that? The reason is everyone in the Netherlands wants to go to southern France in the summer, right? And you're going to run out of inventory. But when I start to learn that my customers who are looking at the south of France maybe are also looking at Italy, this is going to give me a valuable insight which I can use later, okay, in a lot of different ways. But I wouldn't have this insight unless I had the journey data, which is saying that starting in France, customers also consider, okay? And when you hold the clicker upside down, then things go the wrong way. Okay, good. So a couple other things I can get from this. One thing you want to know, for example, is how persistent are searches. If someone's searching for a swimming pool, are they dead set on a swimming pool, or is it a nice to have? Okay, I'm not going to get that just from looking at the booking details, but I am going to get that if I look at people who book swimming pools and see if sometime during their journey they unselected and then reselected swimming pool. That shows me the flexibility that people have in how determined they are. Okay, and really, if you think about it, there are hundreds and hundreds of questions that you can get answers to by analyzing this journey. Okay, in terms of price sensitivity, in terms of flexibility, for alternative options that your holiday makers have. But it only comes if you look at the actual journey. Okay, so this concept in itself is not that unusual, right? So for decades, people have been doing focus groups where they get a number of users in a room and they watch what they do. The difference is this. In the past, you would get maybe a few dozen people and watch what they did. Or if you had a tool like Tealeaf, you could simply replay the examples for a few people. Okay. But when you're looking at hundreds of thousands of visitors and you want to start asking detailed questions, you can't do that with a small focus group. Okay, you can't do that by replaying a few. You need some kind of data source where you're putting all the information in and then you're asking detailed questions, such as how many people who booked in southern France also considered Italy? How many people who asked for a swimming pool also deselected swimming pool at some point versus their journey? How many people who booked a unit for $1,200 were considering a price range up to $1,600? Okay, that type of detailed question you can't ask from a small sample size that you put in a room somewhere. You need sort of a big data solution in order to ask it, because then you're asking this question from your entire population. Okay, so that's the first point I wanted to cover, which is the user journey. And let me also make the point that getting to this point where you could start analyzing user journey is not that difficult. I wrote a blog article about it. Actually, if you look at my website, you'll see it. This is something which we got up and running for them relatively quickly. Okay. Next point I want to talk about is seeing what does and doesn't work on your platform. This is also really key, and this is in some ways a very standard approach. So we talk about A/B testing, and hopefully most of you are familiar with A/B testing. The concept behind A/B testing essentially is I let my customers tell me what works and doesn't work. And the example I like to use is the checkout counter in a supermarket. So you can imagine if you're running a supermarket and you want to decide what to put in a checkout counter, right? There's dozens and dozens of different articles you see here. You see candy, gum, medicine, even batteries there, right? So how do you decide what to put in a checkout counter? Okay, it's very easy. You just choose a half dozen things, or you choose several dozen things, put them in there, see what sells, right? Next week, you change out a few items with new items, see which of those sell. After a few weeks, your customers have told you what they want to buy, okay? It's trial and error, and is letting the customer show you what works. Okay, it's a very standard method. Now, if you want to be serious about conversion rate optimization, you really have to get serious about A/B testing. But in fact, A/B testing is often what leads companies into the big data realm, because of the need to really drill down and understand the results of the A/B testing. In addition, what we find, though, is the results of the A/B testing are going to be different depending on what your platform is. So you can't reuse someone else's results. Here's an example of what I get if I type in iPhone into eBay versus what happens when I type in iPhone into Baslist. Okay, very different pages. Now, I've never worked with Baslist, but I can guarantee that eBay has really tested the life out of the look of their platform. And the reason they have such large pictures, the reason you only see a few results on eBay is because they've validated with A/B testing that this is what optimizes conversion rates, okay, for a site like eBay. For a site like Baslist, which is a product comparison site, obviously they've come to a different conclusion, right? But this type of decision, whether to have a big product, a small product image, whether to have what font to use, what criterion to allow the user to select, what colors, every tiny decision in that page is going to be A/B tested before it goes live. Because when you're looking at something with tens of millions in turnover, if I make a change that results in a 0.5% increase, that's a huge monetary payoff because of the change I made, which I validated through my A/B test. So A/B tests are incredibly important, right? Pretty much every website's running them, but they're not all running them in a really optimized way. Now, what we find with, for example, at Belvila, this took a slightly different form because, of course, we've got the concept of our landing page and how it displays and such. But we found that once we started looking into more big data solutions, once we started recording what users were doing, we had a different flavor for A/B testing, where we could start using A/B testing, the historical data, to understand how well the images were performing. Okay, so here's an example of a search result page for France. So I'm returning 5 different houses, and I want to have an idea of how well I'm presenting these houses. Okay, this is a standard question for accommodation rentals, is I want to know, do I need better photos? Because everyone knows better photos mean more reservations, right? And then you get into the question, how do I determine what a good photo is and not a good photo is? So then we have people manually scoring them. You look at machine learning algorithms to automatically score them and such, and things can get pretty complex and pretty expensive. And then we hit on the idea, you know, our users have been looking at these photos tens of thousands of times. Why don't we let our users tell us which the good photos were, right? So this is sort of a modified form of A/B testing. So what we did is we started looking at how many times we'd shown each house in a search result and how many times those results had actually been clicked on, right? How many times did we show them and how many times had they been clicked on? We started doing the analysis. And for example, here's 2 houses in both in France, both roughly the same price, the same occupancy. We looked at how many times we'd show them and how many times the property had actually been viewed. Can you guess which one had more clicks? How many of you think the top one? And the bottom? So it turns out the top house actually had 200 times the click rate, 200 times more likely to be clicked on than the bottom. Okay? So rather than like doing some complicated machine learning on the images, we automatically knew very easily just by looking at the data which pictures were being effective and which weren't. Now that's just for click-through. Once we're actually looking at booking, we would see different numbers. So these 2 houses, for example, I took the house on the top and a different house on the bottom. When you click through the images, you'd start to get more details, interior images, calendar availability, and such. And even though the house on the top in this case was 12 times more likely to be clicked, okay, 12 times, the house on the bottom, once it was clicked on, was actually 36 times more likely to have a reservation. So again, the users are telling me which products are really working for them in the form of how much higher is the conversion rate. And when I start to know how much higher a conversion rate is for each property based on the user data, I can start computing the actual profit that I'm getting that I can expect to get with each search result page. I can say, hey, if I return this property in the search result page, based on click-through rate and book rate, my average profit per search result page view of this is X number of euros. Okay? So now I'm optimizing not just click-through rate, but I'm also optimizing my revenue. And I should say these numbers are just illustrative, okay? Okay, so that's the second thing, product performance. And the third thing is about guiding your users. So ultimately what you want to do is you want to guide your users towards a successful online experience. And one of the goals that we had that we got in place in about half a year from when I started, although the whole project only took a few weeks, was the real-time recommendation engine. And like I said, we started with pretty much no analytics, but the CTO said, look, we really want a real-time recommendation engine. So that when someone's viewing a property, as they've started to click, we'll start getting insights into what to recommend to them. And you can see the importance of this because it is a very saturated market. There's a lot of competitors in the field. And when you're looking at people searching southern France and having 1,000 houses to choose from, you want to help them find very quickly what they want to find. Okay? So that's another application that we did. We built up the big data system, and then we very quickly turned it into a real-time recommender system, which would essentially put all the data into a graph database. In this case, we use Neo4j, streaming it in real time. And as you're entering the site, what you're viewing, what you're searching on would be fed straight into that graph database. And then through the connections of the properties, through common features, common locations and such, and based on what you viewed and what you searched for, we could begin to start building up an understanding of what seems to be the most relevant property for you as an individual on Belvila, and start making those recommendations, all with the goal of helping the customers find their destination as easily as possible, ultimately optimizing conversion rates. That whole process itself, just as an aside, we took sort of a minimal effort approach to that, and that we actually had pretty much ready to run in 2 weeks, the basic implementation of that. So I guess the point I want to emphasize here is everything that I'm talking about today, all of these things about big data insights and user journey, if you talked about this a couple years ago, it would have been a lot of work, a big effort. You know, when we did it at eBay, it was a lot of custom work. With current technology, current tools, especially in the past couple years, most of what I'm talking, in fact, pretty much everything that I'm talking about today can be done with minimal effort. So probably everyone in this room, your companies have enough capability to get something like this operational. It's no longer really out of reach for most small to mid-sized companies.